The most expensive wedding in the city was about to begin, but the woman arranging the flowers was the only person who knew it should never happen. The Whitmore estate had never looked more beautiful. Thousands of white roses filled the grand hall. Crystal lights reflected across the marble floor, and every detail had been designed to represent perfection. It was the kind of wedding people talked about for years. At the center of it all stood Alexander Whitmore, a 44-year-old mafia boss known for his influence, discipline, and powerful presence. He had built a reputation as a man who controlled every part of his world. His decisions were respected. His name carried weight. And today, surrounded by the most influential people in the city, he believed he was finally entering the happiest chapter of his life. His bride-to-be, Victoria Sinclair, stood beside him as the perfect image of elegance. She came from a respected family, knew how to impress important guests, and appeared to understand the world Alexander lived in. Everyone believed they were the perfect match. Everyone except the woman quietly arranging the final flowers near the altar. Olivia Carter was a 34-year-old black plus-size florist who had spent the past week preparing every arrangement for the wedding. To most guests, she was invisible. She was the person who carried flowers, adjusted decorations, and made sure the room looked beautiful before stepping away. Some people looked at her and only saw her simple work clothes and her quiet personality. They did not see the intelligence behind her careful observations. They did not see the strength it took to remain kind in a world that often judged too quickly. Olivia had learned that people revealed more than they realized when they thought nobody important was watching. While preparing the final floral arrangement, she noticed something unusual. It was not obvious to anyone else. The flowers looked perfect, the design was flawless, and the presentation appeared exactly as requested. But Olivia noticed a small detail that did not belong. A message hidden where nobody would think to look. At first, she wondered if she had misunderstood. She told herself that perhaps she should stay quiet. After all, this was not her world. Alexander Whitmore was a man with power, and she was only the florist hired to make his wedding beautiful. Speaking up could change everything. But Olivia remembered something her grandmother once told her. The truth does not become less important just because the person carrying it has less power. As guests began arriving, Olivia watched the excitement around her. People smiled. Cameras flashed. Everyone celebrated a future that might not exist. Alexander greeted his guests with confidence, unaware that the woman holding the flowers had discovered something that could change the entire meaning of the day. He did not know Olivia's name. He did not know why she kept looking toward the altar with concern. And he certainly did not know that the person he considered a simple florist was about to become the only person brave enough to protect him from the truth waiting beneath the perfect wedding. The ceremony was minutes away. The music was ready. The guests were seated. But Olivia Carter knew that before Alexander Whitmore said yes, he deserved to know everything. The morning of the wedding began with excitement throughout the Whitmore estate. But behind the beautiful decorations and perfect smiles, Olivia Carter carried a secret that felt heavier with every passing minute. She stood quietly near the flower arrangements she had created, watching hundreds of guests arrive. Everyone saw a celebration of love and success. Olivia saw unanswered questions hidden beneath the surface. She had spent years working with flowers because she believed every arrangement told a story. Colors, shapes, and small details could reveal emotions people often tried to hide. That same attention had helped her notice something unusual before the ceremony began. The message she discovered was not something she could ignore. It was connected to Victoria Sinclair, the woman everyone believed was the perfect future wife for Alexander Whitmore. Olivia did not want to believe what she had found. She understood the seriousness of stepping into someone else's life, especially someone as powerful as Alexander. She was only the florist. She was not part of his inner circle. She was not someone people expected to speak during such an important moment. But Olivia had always believed that silence could become a choice, and sometimes the right choice required courage. Across the estate, Alexander prepared for the ceremony, surrounded by people who admired his success. He looked calm and confident, but beneath that controlled expression was a man who valued loyalty above almost everything else. Alexander had spent years building a world where trust was rare and appearances mattered. That was why he believed Victoria was different. She understood his lifestyle. She belonged beside him in the eyes of society. Yet he did not know that the person who truly cared about protecting him was someone he barely noticed. When Olivia delivered the final flowers near the altar, Alexander finally saw her clearly for the first time. Not as a worker hired for an event, not as someone passing through his world. He noticed the concern in her eyes. "Is everything all right?" he asked. Olivia paused. For a moment, she considered walking away. She knew one sentence could change the entire atmosphere of the wedding. She knew people might question her intentions. She knew some would assume she wanted attention. But Olivia also knew that protecting the truth was more important than protecting her comfort. "Mr. Whitmore," she said quietly, "there is something you need to know before this ceremony continues." The nearby conversations slowly faded. Guests began looking toward them. Victoria's expression changed as she noticed the seriousness in Olivia's voice. Alexander studied the florist standing before him. He saw someone who looked nervous but determined. Someone who had nothing to gain from creating a difficult moment. "What is it?" he asked. Olivia looked toward the flowers she had arranged so carefully. Hidden among the beauty was the truth that had been waiting to be discovered. "I found something that does not belong here," she said. The room became still. For the first time that day, nobody was looking at the decorations, the expensive clothing, or the perfect image of the wedding. Everyone was watching the woman they had barely noticed. And Alexander Whitmore was about to learn that the person standing in front of him was not there to ruin his wedding. She was there because she was the only one willing to tell him the truth. The silence inside the Whitmore estate felt heavier than anyone expected. Moments earlier, the room had been filled with music, conversations, and excitement. Now every person stood still, watching the florist who had interrupted the most important moment of Alexander Whitmore's life. Olivia Carter could feel every pair of eyes on her, but she remained calm. She was not standing there because she wanted attention. She was not trying to embarrass anyone. She was standing there because she believed Alexander deserved the chance to make a decision based on the truth. Alexander looked at Olivia carefully. Throughout his life, many people had approached him with hidden intentions. Some wanted influence. Some wanted access to his world. Some wanted to benefit from his name. But Olivia's expression was different. She looked nervous, but not selfish. She looked concerned, not ambitious. That difference made him listen. "Tell me what you found," Alexander said. Olivia carefully explained what she had noticed while preparing the floral arrangements. She described the unusual detail hidden within the wedding decorations and how it connected to information that did not match the story everyone believed. She did not accuse anyone. She did not make dramatic claims. She simply presented what she knew and allowed Alexander to see the truth for himself. The guests watched closely. Some whispered quietly, wondering why a florist believed she had the right to speak at such an important event. They saw her position but did not see her courage. They saw her occupation but did not understand her character. Victoria Sinclair remained beside the altar, maintaining her elegant appearance, but her confidence began to fade. She had expected the day to continue exactly as planned. She had expected everyone to admire the perfect image she created. She had never expected someone like Olivia to notice what others ignored. Alexander turned his attention toward Victoria. For the first time that day, he looked beyond the image everyone admired. He remembered all the moments when he believed appearances represented reality. He had built his life around careful decisions, yet he realized that even the most powerful people could miss important truths when they only saw what they wanted to see. Olivia stood quietly as the room waited for Alexander's response. She did not ask him to believe her because of her position. She did not ask him to choose her side. She simply gave him information and respected his ability to decide. That was what surprised Alexander most. She had every reason to remain silent. She could have avoided criticism. She could have protected her job. Instead, she chose honesty. After reviewing the details Olivia revealed, Alexander's expression changed. The certainty he had carried all morning disappeared. He looked toward the altar where he had planned to begin a new chapter of his life, then looked back at the woman who had stopped him before it was too late. "How did you notice this?" he asked. Olivia answered softly, "Because I was paying attention." Those simple words stayed with him. In a world where people often looked only at what was obvious, Olivia had noticed what everyone else missed. And Alexander Whitmore finally understood that the person with the least power in the room might have been the person with the clearest vision. The wedding that was supposed to represent perfection had become the moment when every hidden truth began to surface. Inside the Whitmore estate, the guests remained silent as Alexander Whitmore stood near the altar, processing everything he had just learned. The flowers surrounding him were still beautiful, the decorations were still carefully arranged, and the room still looked like the dream everyone had expected. But the meaning behind that perfect image had changed completely. Alexander had spent years believing that control was the key to protecting himself. He built his reputation by making careful decisions and trusting very few people. Yet standing there, he realized that the person who had shown him the most honesty was the one person nobody expected to have influence over his life. Olivia Carter remained a few steps away, quietly waiting. She did not interrupt. She did not demand gratitude. She did not use the moment to make herself important. That was what made Alexander pay even closer attention to her. He had seen countless people use opportunities to improve their own position, but Olivia was doing the opposite. She had risked being misunderstood simply because she believed he deserved the truth. Alexander asked his team to review the information Olivia had discovered. The process was calm and careful. He did not want assumptions. He wanted facts. As the details became clearer, the image he had trusted began to fall apart. The story he had been given was incomplete, and the person he thought understood him best had hidden important truths. Around the room, people who had previously ignored Olivia began seeing her differently. The same guests who barely noticed the florist before were now watching her with curiosity and respect. They had judged her based on her role, her appearance, and the simple clothing she wore. They never considered that she might be the person with the strongest sense of responsibility in the room. Victoria Sinclair tried to maintain her composure. She had always been admired for her elegance and confidence. She knew how to present the perfect image, and that image had convinced many people. But now Alexander was looking beyond appearances. He was seeing the difference between someone who wanted to be admired and someone who genuinely cared about what was right. Later, away from the guests, Alexander found Olivia near the garden where she had placed some of the remaining floral arrangements. The evening light created a peaceful atmosphere, completely different from the tension inside the ceremony hall. "You knew people might blame you for this," Alexander said. Olivia nodded. "Yes." "Then why did you do it?" he asked. Olivia looked at the flowers beside her. "Because a beautiful moment built on a hidden truth is not truly beautiful." Her answer stayed with him. Alexander had spent his entire life surrounded by people who carefully chose their words. Olivia was different. She did not speak to gain approval. She spoke because she believed honesty mattered. For the first time, Alexander wondered how many people he had overlooked simply because they did not belong to his world. The woman standing before him was not powerful because of money, influence, or reputation. She was powerful because she had the courage to do what was right when nobody expected her to. And as the wedding guests slowly left the estate, Alexander Whitmore understood something he would never forget. The person who interrupted his perfect day might have been the one person who truly protected his future. The days following the interrupted wedding were filled with questions, conversations, and a truth that slowly changed the way everyone viewed the events at the Whitmore estate. For Alexander Whitmore, the experience was not only about discovering what had been hidden from him. It was about realizing how easily a person could become trapped by an image they wanted to believe. He had spent years building a life where every decision was carefully calculated. He trusted evidence, reputation, and results. But Olivia Carter had reminded him that some of the most important truths were not found in documents or business meetings. They were found in the actions of people who expected nothing in return. Olivia returned to her flower studio after the wedding, believing her role in Alexander's life had ended. She did not expect a thank you. She did not expect recognition. She simply wanted to continue creating beautiful arrangements and helping people celebrate meaningful moments. To her, telling the truth had never been about becoming important. It had been about doing what was right. But Alexander was not ready to let her disappear from his world so easily. He visited her small flower shop one quiet afternoon. Unlike the grand spaces where he usually met people, the shop was warm and simple. Fresh flowers filled the room with color, and every arrangement reflected patience and care. Alexander looked around and noticed something he had never seen before. Olivia had created beauty without needing attention. "You always work this hard, and nobody knows how much effort you put into it," Alexander said. Olivia smiled softly. "Most people do not notice flowers until they need them. Her answer made him pause. He realized she was not only talking about flowers. She was talking about people. Some things were valuable, even when they were overlooked. Alexander apologized for the way people in his world had treated her. He admitted that he had noticed her position before he noticed her character. Olivia listened quietly. She appreciated his honesty, but she did not want an apology that existed only because of what she had done for him. "I hope you see everyone this way now," she said. "Not because I helped you, but because everyone deserves to be seen." Those words stayed with Alexander. He understood that Olivia did not want special treatment. She wanted a world where kindness and respect were given freely. As time passed, Alexander began changing the way he interacted with the people around him. He listened more. He asked questions he had never thought to ask before. He started noticing the employees, workers, and ordinary people who helped keep his world moving. Many were surprised by the difference. The man who once seemed impossible to approach had become someone who valued connection more than appearance. Meanwhile, Olivia continued living the same way she always had. She never used her connection with Alexander to gain influence. She never allowed people to treat her differently because of what she knew. She remained humble, thoughtful, and focused on the things that mattered to her. One evening, Alexander returned to the garden at the Whitmore estate where they had spoken after the wedding. He looked at the flowers surrounding them and remembered how everything had changed because one person chose honesty over comfort. "You changed my life without ever trying to," he told her. Olivia smiled. Maybe people change when they are finally willing to listen. Alexander looked at the woman who had been underestimated by so many. He finally understood that the greatest strength was not having the power to control a situation. It was having the courage to accept the truth when it arrived from someone unexpected. Months passed after the day that changed everything at the Whitmore estate, but the lesson Alexander Whitmore learned never left him. The world around him had always been built on appearances. Expensive suits, powerful connections, and carefully planned events had surrounded him for years. He believed success meant being respected by everyone around him. But Olivia Carter showed him something he had forgotten. True respect was not demanded. It was earned through the way a person treated others when there was nothing to gain. Olivia continued working with flowers, creating arrangements for weddings, celebrations, and everyday moments that brought people happiness. She never searched for attention. She never reminded anyone of what she had done for Alexander. She simply continued being the same person she had always been. Kind, patient, honest. One afternoon, Alexander visited her flower studio again. This time, he did not arrive as a powerful businessman expecting special treatment. He arrived as a man who wanted to understand the person who had changed his perspective. The small shop was filled with the scent of fresh flowers and the quiet sounds of Olivia working. She carefully arranged a collection of white roses, the same type of flowers that had once surrounded the wedding that never happened. Alexander watched her hands move with care and noticed something important. Olivia treated every flower as if it mattered. She did not rush. She did not ignore the smallest details. She gave everything the same attention, whether it was a grand event or a simple arrangement for someone's home. "You know," Alexander said, "I used to think power meant being the person everyone listened to." Olivia looked at him and smiled gently. "And now?" she asked. Alexander looked around the shop. "Now I think power means knowing when to listen." Those words represented how much he had changed. The man who once believed he had all the answers had learned the value of humility. He began supporting local businesses, creating opportunities for workers, and treating people with more respect. He did not do it for praise. He did it because Olivia helped him see the people he had overlooked for years. Their connection grew. Slowly, built on trust rather than appearances. There was no need for grand promises or perfect images. What mattered was the understanding they had developed. Olivia never tried to change Alexander into someone else. She simply reminded him of the person he could become when he allowed honesty and compassion to guide him. One evening, they returned to the garden where they had spoken after the wedding. The flowers around them were blooming under the soft evening light. Alexander looked at the peaceful scene and remembered how close he had come to making the biggest mistake of his life. "I spent so much time searching for loyalty from people who wanted something from me," he said. "I never expected to find it from someone who had nothing to gain." Olivia looked at the garden and replied, "Sometimes the people we overlook are the ones who see us the clearest." The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was a moment of understanding. Alexander Whitmore, a man who once believed everything valuable had a price, finally understood that kindness, honesty, and dignity were the things that mattered most. And the woman everyone had underestimated became the person who reminded him what true character looked like. The story of Alexander Whitmore and Olivia Carter slowly became something people in the city could not ignore. Not because of wealth, status, or power, but because it challenged the way people looked at others. For years, many had judged Olivia before knowing her. They saw a plus-size black florist working behind the scenes and assumed she was simply someone hired to complete a task. They never imagined she would be the person who changed the direction of a powerful man's life. But Alexander remembered everything. He remembered the quiet confidence in her voice when she told him the truth. He remembered how she stood alone in a room full of influential people and chose honesty over comfort. Most importantly, he remembered that she never asked for anything in return. As time passed, Alexander began sharing Olivia's story with the people around him, not as a story about saving him, but as a reminder about the importance of seeing others clearly. During a private gathering at the Whitmore estate, many of the same guests who had once overlooked Olivia were present again. The atmosphere was different this time. They were no longer looking at her as someone who simply arranged flowers. They were looking at her as someone whose character spoke louder than any title. One guest approached Olivia and apologized for the way she had been treated in the past. Olivia accepted the apology with kindness, but she did not hold onto the resentment. She understood that people could change when they were willing to recognize their mistakes. Alexander watched from across the room and admired something he had noticed from the beginning. Olivia never needed approval to know her worth. Her confidence did not come from being recognized by powerful people. It came from knowing who she was. Later that evening, Alexander and Olivia walked through the garden where the flowers were blooming under the soft lights. It had become a place where they often reflected on how much had changed. "You know what surprised me the most?" Alexander said. Olivia looked at him with curiosity. "What?" Everyone thought the most important person at that wedding was the person standing at the altar. He paused and looked around the garden. But it was the person holding the flowers who saw the truth first. Olivia smiled. Sometimes people notice the person in the spotlight. They forget to notice the people making everything possible behind the scenes. Alexander knew those words carried a meaning far beyond their situation. He had spent years surrounded by people who wanted to be close to power. Olivia had been different. She was close to him because she valued honesty, not because of what his name could provide. The change in Alexander was visible to everyone. He became more patient, more thoughtful, more aware of the people who had always been around him but rarely received attention. He learned that leadership was not about making others feel small. It was about making others feel valued. Olivia continued building her flower business, inspiring people with the same kindness she had always shown. She became known not because of her connection to Alexander, but because of her own talent and compassion. Two people from completely different worlds had discovered something unexpected. One had power but needed wisdom. The other had humility but carried strength that many never recognized. And together, they proved that the person who changes your life is not always the one standing beside you in the spotlight. Sometimes, they are the one quietly arranging the flowers, waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. Years after the day that changed everything at the Whitmore estate, Alexander Whitmore no longer measured his life by the power he held or the influence attached to his name. He had learned that a person's true value was not determined by how many people followed their commands, but by how many people felt respected in their presence. That lesson began with Olivia Carter, the florist who had walked into his world as someone almost everyone overlooked. Olivia never tried to become part of Alexander's world. She never chased attention, wealth, or recognition. She simply continued doing what she had always done, creating beauty, showing kindness, and treating every person with dignity. Her flower studio became known throughout the city, not because of her connection to Alexander, but because people discovered the passion behind her work. Customers came not only for her beautiful arrangements, but for the warmth they felt when they entered her shop. Olivia had a way of making people feel seen, something Alexander had learned was more valuable than any luxury. Meanwhile, Alexander continued changing the way he led his businesses and interacted with those around him. The people who worked with him noticed the difference. He listened before making decisions. He asked for opinions instead of assuming he already knew the answer. He recognized the efforts of people who had spent years working quietly behind the scenes. Many wondered what caused such a transformation in a man who once seemed impossible to reach. Alexander always gave the same answer. Someone reminded me that every person has a story. One afternoon, Alexander visited Olivia's flower studio while she was preparing arrangements for a local charity event. He watched as she carefully selected each flower, considering not only how they looked together, but what feeling they would create for the people receiving them. "You still do everything the same way," Alexander said. Olivia smiled. "What do you mean?" "You treat every flower like it matters." She looked at the arrangement in front of her. "Because it does." Alexander smiled because he knew she was talking about more than flowers. She had always believed small things mattered. Small gestures, small moments, small acts of kindness that people often ignored. That belief had changed him. Later that week, Alexander attended the charity event and watched Olivia interact with families, workers, and volunteers. She was comfortable with everyone, regardless of their background or position. There was no difference in the respect she showed people. She had the same kindness for everyone. Alexander realized that was the quality he admired most. Olivia did not become valuable because powerful people finally noticed her. She had always been valuable. People simply needed to look beyond their assumptions to see it. As the evening ended, Alexander and Olivia stood outside beneath the soft lights of the garden. The flowers around them reminded him of the moment when everything changed. "I used to think my world was built by the people with the most influence," Alexander said. "Now I know it was built by the people who cared when nobody was watching." Olivia looked at him and smiled. The journey they had taken was never about changing one person's status. It was about changing the way people saw each other. And Alexander Whitmore finally understood that the greatest discoveries in life are often found in the places and people everyone else chooses to ignore. Years had passed since the day Olivia Carter walked into the center of a wedding ceremony and revealed the truth that changed Alexander Whitmore's life forever. The city remembered that day for many reasons, but Alexander remembered it for one simple lesson. The person everyone overlooked was the person who saw everything clearly. The Whitmore estate still stood as a symbol of success, but it no longer represented only wealth and influence. It became a place where people were welcomed, respected, and valued. Alexander had changed the atmosphere around him because Olivia had changed the way he viewed the world. He no longer measured people by their titles, their appearance, or their social position. He looked at their character. He listened to their stories. He understood that every person carried something meaningful, even when others failed to notice. Olivia continued to create flowers that brought happiness to countless people. Her small flower studio grew into a respected business, but she remained exactly the same person Alexander had met years earlier. She still arrived early to prepare arrangements. She still remembered the names of her customers. She still believed that every detail mattered because every person receiving her work mattered. Her success never changed her kindness. One spring afternoon, Alexander visited Olivia's studio before a special community celebration. The room was filled with colorful flowers, gentle music, and the peaceful energy that always surrounded her. He watched as she helped a young customer choose flowers for a family member, taking time to understand the meaning behind the gesture. Alexander smiled because he recognized the same quality that had changed him. Olivia did not simply arrange flowers. She helped people express emotions they struggled to say themselves. "You know," Alexander said, looking around the studio, "years ago I thought the most important people were the ones everyone noticed." Olivia looked at him and smiled. "And now?" Alexander paused. "Now I know the most important people are often the ones everyone forgets to notice." The answer carried the weight of everything he had learned. Their journey had never been about a powerful man discovering someone beneath his status. It had been about two people from different worlds teaching each other something important. Alexander showed Olivia that her voice deserved to be heard. Olivia showed Alexander that strength could exist without control and influence could exist without power. As the sun began setting, they walked through the garden behind the studio. Flowers moved gently in the evening breeze, creating the same peaceful feeling that had surrounded their first honest conversation. Alexander looked at the woman beside him and remembered the moment when he almost missed the truth because he was focused on appearances. I spent so much of my life looking for loyalty in the wrong places, he said. Then someone I barely knew gave me the one thing I needed most. Olivia smiled softly. Sometimes the people who know the least about your reputation are the ones who see the most about your heart. The garden became quiet. There was no audience, no celebration, and no need for recognition. Only two people who understood how much one honest choice could change everything. Alexander Whitmore had once believed power was the greatest thing a person could have. But after everything he experienced, he knew the truth. A person's greatest strength was the courage to be honest, the humility to learn, and the kindness to see the value in others. And that day, the world remembered what dignity looks like.